In today's video, we start restoration of this old Kutter scythe made from around 1880 to 1910 or 1920, so most likely over 100 years old. I'm really happy with the progress so far. This video is about fixing the wood, fixing the metal, and repainting it and stuff like that. And then the next video will be about sharpening the blade, because that seems to be a whole project in and of itself. Then of course the third video will be about turning new wood handles for it, because the old wood handles pretty much disintegrated. Well, let's get on with the video. So we picked these up a while ago, I'd say 2015 or 2014, and I think it's about time I restore at least one to get one working one. But as it stands now, we have one with the blade, and the mechanism seems okay. It's very loose on the wood though, so that'll need some fixing. The handles are either missing or really bad quality. Like you can tell it's really rotted. This entire piece is just really light and you can scratch it with your fingers. So I don't hold much hope for this piece of wood. The sad thing is, I bet I know what happened. Those two didn't have blades, so they were probably stored in the side. And this one, since it had a blade and it's a complete one, some idiot probably put it outside as a decoration because people were fucking stupid. And so that one got weathered and ruined, basically. But I'm thinking I might be able to take some of the handles off of these ones, which this one's just a pipe. It's not that great. But, I mean, if I could just transfer the blade over, that'd be great. But each one of these has a different connector on it. This one came with these two rings and a piece of baling wire holding them on, but that's, I mean, it doesn't have the same stuff as this. This has this triangle piece of metal coming from the blade, and then this little loop that pulls it in. You tighten it by this nut right here, and then it sticks into here, and this entire thing hooks in through this bolt, and it has the wood inside of this little cap here. And then this one looks like it was a very similar design. It has that little hook thing, but it's snapped off. The blade looks like it's snapped off here, or something was on here. It looks like that's snapped off, and so I guess I might be able to transfer this one onto here, put this here, but then that still leaves a place where I need to put that spike going into here, and I don't think that would actually work out very well. But it could be that just with a little bit of linseed oil and some sanding, maybe I could find some usable wood in here. It is just the end piece right here that's bad, and I guess I don't really need that too much. I just care about the part leading up to the second handle. The second handle is really, really fucked. Could very easily split in half. Like, yeah, I can break with my hands. Okay, so we can start by removing the blade itself. That end does like so. This does look somewhat similar to this. And this could technically fit in there, so that's promising. Just, I don't know how I feel about that going into there. Okay, that's interesting. And I guess maybe I could see about transferring this over to here. Okay, that might actually work. So it looks very similar. Okay, that would actually work very well. Oh, fucking hell. This might just stay on here. I think what I'll do is I'll have a cup and then have the wood just sitting inside the cup with a bunch of linseed oil in it. I'm going to use this opportunity to use up the rest of my raw linseed oil. I think it should probably definitely soak all that up. So I'll set that down right there, so. And I can just have this soaking in there. And then I can tie this onto here so stray cats don't knock it over or whatever. Or, you know, my cat doesn't knock it over. And I'll let that sit overnight. Workshop Hero sent me a batch of Metal Rescue to try out, which I'm usually not much for like promotional things, but I thought this could be kind of useful, so let's go ahead and use this. Although, I just want to make sure that you know that I got this for free, and I personally would not recommend it just for the fact that removing rust you could do with electrolysis for free. So, although, I don't know, I never used it before. It might be worth it just because of like all the hassle with electrolysis rust removal. Evidently, I just mix it with some water. I'll pour a bunch into here. Oh, look at that. That's pretty good. I think that's all. You know, I'm kind of surprised that worked as well as it did. I think with a little bit of brushing it'll take off some more rust. And yeah. These parts cleaned up very nicely. It's an interesting little like gray color to them. I think that's it. Let the stuff dry out, then maybe we can paint it or something. Not sure. Here's something interesting. It's actually a Kutter Scythe. It's kind of interesting. Especially since I only recently picked up this Kutter lawnmower from the 1950s. I just looked up the company, and it actually has kind of an interesting history behind it. So I might do a video just about Keen Kutter, like maybe after I restore the lawnmower and after I restore the Scythe, which now I'm actually thinking, since I can see a little speck of red paint on there, I think I'll try to restore it back to probably what it looked like before, instead of just making it how I think it would look nice. Like, actually maybe go back to what it was, since now I know it's a Keen Kutter. So the company started in, I think, the 1870s, and originally the Keen Kutter was only the axe that they sold, but then in 1880, I believe, they branched out the name to mean anything, and they had like Keen Kutter scythes and whatnot. And they were an extremely popular company. They made some of the best stuff on the market, from what I can tell. And then things took a steep decline around World War I. So from what I understand, a lot of the farm equipment like that, the older stuff, was actually made before World War I, so that scythe most likely is over 100 years old, which is pretty cool. And if not, it's probably up until like the 1930s or 1940s. It looks like after 1905 or so, they really started branching out into other things and not focusing very much at all on farm equipment. So that scythe's probably pretty old then, so I'm pretty happy about that. If any of you guys have the old Keen Kutter catalogs, because I'm not sure if I said this yet, but they were the first company to have a fully illustrated hardware catalog, so it was like a really beautiful catalog, almost like the MasterCard, but earlier. And so if any of you guys happen to have any Keen Kutter catalogs, if you could do me a favor and look through it and see if you see any scythes that look like this, and then let me know like what year the catalog was. Like, oh, if it's a 1910 catalog and they have the exact same scythe, then most likely it's at least from that era. You know what I mean? Come on. I figure I want this to last quite a long time, so I'm going to put several coatings of paint on each of these, especially the blade. And now that gives us time to look at the handle. It seems to have licked up a little bit of oil, so that's cool. I'm just going to use a brush to get rid of some of this stuff, because it's obviously not soaking up anymore. Now I'm curious to see how it works whenever we flip it. And then we can just take that and pour the rest of the linseed oil into it. Oh my god, look at this. The linseed oil is traveling through the wood and coming out. You can especially see it down here. Look at that. So just in about 45 minutes, it's gone from here down to here. I'm not too concerned about it being on the surface. I just want it to be in the core of it. And then I can take some of the boiled linseed oil I have and coat the surface so it dries faster. But I'll use the pure raw linseed oil to go on the inside. That's so cool. So I've let it sit overnight, and the linseed oil has traveled down here, coming up here, and also right here. Unfortunately, it looks like ants love this shit. And of course there's a dead cricket in my linseed oil. That always seems to happen. There are a lot of crickets around here. Looks like linseed oil really dissolves this. Ew, shit. Well, that might not be a good idea. But it is going, so that's at least a start. That's kind of working. You know, this is a very tedious shape to work with. I think that's enough experimentation for one video. Now I know that the oil soaks up somewhat okay from the bottom. It goes down from the top better. That glue, the adhesive on the tape didn't really work too well, and that ants love linseed oil. So I don't want to wait a week, or actually weeks or months, for this to fully oxidize or dry. So I'm just going to use some boiled linseed oil, which I've never really had too much experience with. You know, boiled linseed oil sure does smell slightly different than regular raw linseed oil. Must be like the cadmium or the uranium or, you know, whatever poisonous stuff they put in there. Children's tears, who knows. Hopes and dreams, asbestos. Looks pretty good. I might put some more coats on there later, but that's really nice and dark. So I put like 4 or 5 coats of paint on this, and about 3 or 4 coats of paint on these. This has dried really nicely. I've let it all sit for about 2 days, so the paint's nice and hard and whatnot. I think it's finally time for us to reassemble it. Now this won't fully fit on here. It needs to go back just a little bit more, like, oh, I don't know, like 4 millimeters. I think it's mostly just this piece right here that's holding it, so I'm just going to whittle that real quick. So after a good amount of fiddling around, I realized that those wood ones just, they are not going to work. I really need to make new wood handles. So I went with an all-metal handle, just for now. I can replace that later. And I moved them back a little bit. I moved this one back that much and moved this one back that much, because I find that whenever I hold it, it's just, it doesn't exactly reach the ground. So I moved it back a little bit. And then I realized that this entire thing kind of moves forward a little bit, or leans forward, and so whenever I like ripped out that little piece of wood underneath there so that I can go down, that kind of made it to where the blade angle was too much like that, and I fear that that might not cut too well. But speaking of cutting, I have one of these little V carbide knife cutters, and knife sharpener, I mean, and I think, yes, I can go through and clean it up like that. It feels a bit sharper, although this blade's been really eaten up. Looks like whoever had this before hit random junk with it. So it's been 2 weeks that I've been trying to sharpen this stupid blade, and I just haven't gotten anywhere. Sharpening a scythe is obviously an art unto itself. Actually, I imagine sharpening any tool in general this much is an art unto itself. I'm having a hard time getting it to even barely cut me. I mean, I'm not trying, but any time that I accidentally hit the blade, it doesn't cut me, and so it's unfortunate. I bought this sharpening stone from 1953. Didn't seem to work too much. These 2 sharpening stones are kind of nice. I might be able to use these for, what's the term, honing, to straighten the tip of the blade during operation. I found that this seems to work okay, as far as handheld sharpening, but I think that's the main problem. My main problem is the fact that I'm holding these by hand and trying to sharpen it by hand, and that's just too imprecise because your hand moves back and forth too much, no matter how hard you try. So what I think I should do is I should make a second video, a part 2, about actually sharpening this, but I'll make that whenever I find a nice sharpening stone, like a nice one that spins nice and slow. And then I can do it like I see on YouTube videos where you hold the blade up against the stone really slowly and give it a nice even finish. I think that's in a pretty reasonable state. I'm really happy with how this has come. I think the next video can be about sharpening, and that'll happen whenever I find the proper sharpening stone. And then later on down the line, I'll want to work on turning my wood lathe back into a functioning lathe, and then we can try to turn new handles for it to get rid of those metal handles. But yeah, I'm happy with how this is. If only I can get it sharpened, I think it should be pretty useful. Well, we have some grass over here, so might as well give it a go just to see just to see where the sharpness is now after like several days of work. I am happy with how it holds though. It is very, like, moving the handles back does help a bit. Unfortunately, I do worry that the blades are like that much of an angle. That's quite a bit. It doesn't fill me with confidence. It could be an issue with blade angle, but I also think mostly it's just I haven't sharpened it to nearly what it should be. So that's unfortunate. From my understanding, you shouldn't have to force it. It should be pretty leisurely, if that's the right term, like pretty relaxed, where you're just going back and forth. I don't know. I'll focus on sharpening this, and then we can come back to this. I'm really happy with the progress made so far, though. Well guys, that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and thank you very much for watching. See ya!